กรัมนะแล้วก็ขึ้นไปยืนติ๊งนะวันที่17นิดหน่อย62 กิโลกรัมจากเดือนที่10จนถึงเดือนที่1AUA ก็กินช็อกโกแลตเค้กคุกกี้ทุกวันก็62 กิโลกรัมตอนนี้วันที่21เดือนกรกฎาคมปี 2009
If I could find a way to do this in half the time or a quarter of the time, I'd cut off both arms and both legs to do that.
One of the things that we talked about now, when I came in, you had a very interesting way of sort of evaluating someone's prior experience with the language and then assigning how many hours you thought it was worth.
Right.
Or how many hours it counted as, because obviously hours spent in the country is not hours exposed to the language. And the average person living in Bangkok, they're exposed to the same 15 minutes of Thai every day for 20 years. A question that comes up a lot in the seminars that I've been giving, and actually, and when I tell that to people in Taiwan, you'll see all the foreigners kind of nodding their heads and raising their hand. Yeah, in the first few weeks, I learned my numbers. I learned to tell time. How much is that? I learned the names of my favorite dishes, and a year later, that's still
about what they know.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so everybody agreed with that. And then the common question that came up was, what about experience with other languages? How much does that help you? Now, I tended to believe from our prior conversations, as a rule, fluency in 3 or 4 or 5 languages doesn't dramatically improve your ability to learn, for example, Thai or Chinese. And
our experience has been that language isn't a huge factor at all, but culture is. And I've come to believe that you really cannot separate culture and language. I think they're two of the same things, maybe two ways of looking at the same thing. Anyone who has been exposed or is fluent in a culture that's similar to Thai culture progresses much faster than someone who hasn't been. And so we do in the student profile, we want to know, have you lived in a country like Malaysia for any length of time? If so, how long? What did you do there? Did you learn the language is one way we ask that question, but the language itself is far less important than did you live there in an embassy compound or did you live there with the Malay?
Right.
Something like that. Yeah.
Because actually,
yeah, huge.
For example, Malaysian language is completely unrelated to Thai, right? Because it's a Malay-based language, and Thai is sort of a Chinese 8th cousin.
Yep. But the Malay will learn Thai much faster than, say, the Chinese.
Because of cultural.
Cultural difference. And the Chinese will be much faster again than someone from Europe.
Yep.
And in Europe, you have many people who know 5, 6 languages. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, yeah.
And they'll go at the same rate as the person who comes in with one language from America, say.
Yeah, that was the example I was giving in my seminars in Taiwan. I said that actually, that speaking Chinese and Thai, I can see a lot of correlations between the language and a lot of words that are very similar. Number one, Chinese people didn't even see those connections, and 2, it absolutely didn't help because the cultures are just too different.
Right.
But we had a student here when I was here 2 years ago, a guy named Hong, who was a Rhodes Scholar or something, and Fulbright Scholar. He was a Khmer refugee to the United States, right. And he'd actually never lived in Cambodia, but he came in and he learned very quickly, and he had the culture.
Right. And he would be going at a rate where we say you start speaking at about 700 hours. He would start speaking probably around 2, maybe 250 hours. He would be at that same level.
Yeah.
So it's not enough just to say the number of hours. It depends on the student, where they're from, their background.
Yeah, yeah. And Cambodia is the one, obviously, that I have a lot of experience with, but that's the example that I give, that Khmer and Thai are actually completely unrelated languages, but Khmers tend to do well. But probably not a lot of data on Khmers in the program.
We have a bit more on the Vietnamese and Burmese, maybe more than Khmer.
And then with Burmese, it would depend, right? If they're Shan, then they're already speaking Thai, basically.
Right.
But from Asia, I guess your biggest groups are Korean and Japanese.
Korean, Japanese.
Chinese speaking would be third.
Yeah, we get quite a few people from Singapore.
Singapore,
and
Taiwan.
It's amazing that the Singaporeans go quite quickly as well.
Oh, that's interesting. So Singaporeans, if you have a Taiwanese, he probably doesn't do particularly well.
The same about as the mainland Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would be about the same as a European, or?
No. 20% faster.
Okay.
Yeah. But then you go to Singapore and they're half.
They're half Malay.
Well, they're twice as fast as a typical Westerner.
That's interesting.
Yeah. The way we rate those is the slowest you can go would be a Westerner. Give them a value of a 1, and it goes down from there. So 700-800 hours to begin speaking is if you're valued at a 1. If your value becomes like a 0.8 or 80%, that would be Chinese. And then you go down from there, maybe 70%, 60%, 20%, Laotian learning Thai, something like that. And then
65นะเพราะฉะนั้นในห้องนี้นะคนที่หนักมากที่สุดครับผมใครครับคุณไบรอันนะน้ำหนักเบาคุณแดเนียลอันนี้เป็นน้ำหนักหนักแล้วก็เบานะฮะ
Firstly, if the language being acquired was English, pardon me, say Spanish, and I'm from United States, I could probably learn Spanish totally. The total curriculum might be 400 or 500 hours.
Yeah.
I'd start speaking at something over 100 hours.
Yeah.
And be quite fast.
Yeah, I've seen that in my travels and my research in Asia, that I've met Asians who spoke European languages other than English, and I've never met one who spoke it well. And I mean, I know people that did their whole. One of my friends in Taiwan that I trained with, he did his whole 5 years of engineering study in Switzerland, in Zurich, taught in German. His position at the company is that he's the official German translator for the company, and his German is, I mean, it's like talking to a 5th grader.
Right. The people fail to take into account, I think, how complex languages are, and the idea that we can break it down and manually put that knowledge in our heads goes against everything we can see. For years we've credited children to being better learners than adults are because they seem to pick up language naturally. But what our program has shown for over 20 years is when adults have the same opportunity to gain understandable input, have experiences that are understandable, and will let, this is a big key for adults too, they've got to let nature take its course, as it were. Don't play around with what we can do as adults. Little kids can't do it. They can't memorize long lists of words. They can't go out and make the comparisons between a cat or a dog and a mao and a ma in Thai, something like that. They can't do that yet. So they're unable to do the adult thing. They pick it up naturally, but we give them the right kind of input, don't we? And so our whole program is based on that idea. We've demonstrated that adults haven't lost that ability at all.
Yeah.
And there's no way that manual grabbing a hold of these bits and pieces and trying to assemble them can match what nature does for us automatically.
Yeah, one of my pet peeves is the whole children learn faster thing. And I quoted you. I did an article that was based on a quote from you, which was, children don't learn calculus faster.
Yeah.
Why do we expect them to learn language faster? For example, in Germany, where I went to school, there's a 1-year program that you can show up, you don't speak a word of German, and you go in this unbelievably intensive 1-year program, and at the end of it you sit the entrance exam for university. And not everybody passes, and if you don't, then you just repeat the program, and okay, maybe at the end of 2 years, you're now ready to go to university in Germany. You could do that at 50 years old. A German 10-year-old cannot.
And a 5-year-old really cannot.
A 5-year-old can't.
They wouldn't give you the time of day.
No.
And that's the real key difference. The hard part we have here is trying to get adults to realize that their brains still work the way they worked when they were little, and they still pick up knowledge and understanding through their eyes, not just through words and what those words mean.
อันนี้ช้อนผู้แชมป์อันนี้สอบผู้แชมป์เวลากินข้าวอันนี้ช้อนพี่เน่งอันนี้สอบพี่เน่งเวลากินข้าวเพราะฉะนั้นของพี่เน่งเนี่ยถ้ารวมกันเบากว่าของผู้แชมป์หนักกว่า